Fate Be Changed, Chapter 46, Merida. Merida stood in the corner near one of the coats of arms. Her eyes focused on Eleanor and Fergus and the undeniable affection between them. She wanted to soak in as much of her parents' young love as she could. The time for her to leave was drawing near. She felt herself becoming more feral with each second that passed. It would not be long before her full transformation into a bear was complete. She could not allow anyone to see it. Yet she could not seem to make her feet move. She could not take her eyes off her parents. Merida was surprised by the twinge of melancholy at leaving. She would miss young Eleanor and Fergus, and even some of the staff at McCameron Castle, like Sorcha. But she also could not wait to see the mother and father she knew and loved, along with her brothers, Maudie, and all the others at Castle Dunbroch. And at least now she could go knowing that all would be well in McCameron Kingdom. Earlier, when she had gone up to the dais to inquire about Fergus's injury, Gawain had been speaking to the king. Merida did not catch everything that was said, but she had heard enough to know that Lachlan, Lennox, Gregory, and Eileen had all been captured. The chieftain of Clan Fraser had been as surprised as anyone else by the plot. He was found not to have been involved. The kingdom was no longer in peril, and based on what she had witnessed tonight, she was confident the rules regarding the princess's betrothal were about to be rewritten. The crowd began to empty out into the courtyard. Sorcha had explained that the celebration would move outside well before the sun began to set to ensure that the revelers were there to watch the summer solstice reach its peak, which was Merida's signal that it was time to leave. She considered bidding Eleanor and Fergus a final farewell, but decided it was better she simply left McCameron Castle. Let them think she had slipped away to return to her homeland in the south of Scotland. She took one last look at the dais before making her way out of the great hall. In no time, Merida was on Angus's back, racing through the forest. When she reached the village, she headed directly for the woodcarver's shop. "There you are," Freya greeted her. She glanced at Merida's hands and reared back. "It looks as if you were just in time, lass. You remain here much longer and you will have turned into a full bear." Merida didn't need Freya to tell her that. She could feel it. Her entire body was now covered in fur. Her sharp claws tore through the gloves and the tips of her slippers. She had awoken this morning with what she thought was a toothache, but upon further inspection, she realized 2 of her upper teeth had doubled in size. They were so long that they had pierced the bottom of her mouth. She now had a full set of fangs. The only things left of her human form were her face and her mind. How much longer before those transformed as well? She grew more aggressive at the slightest provocation, like every bear she had ever encountered. She was becoming one of them. Freya pointed to the window. "The most powerful point of the solstice is drawing near. Come, the spell is complete." A mixture of excitement, anticipation, and a touch of fear rushed through Merida's veins. Her life had been turned upside down the last time she consumed one of Freya's spells. They entered the rearmost room of the shop. Sitting in the center of a small wooden table was a tiny cake that nearly looked identical to the one Merida had gotten back in the woodcarver's cottage. "Go on, eat," Freya encouraged. Merida picked up the cake and took a generous bite. She swallowed, then closed her eyes. Nothing happened. She took another bite, eager to see her family, but all she saw was Freya and the bear carvings occupying the shelves in the room. "Should I eat more?" she asked. "Yes," Freya said in a panicked voice. She rushed to the window. Yes, eat the entire cake. The sun is at its highest. Eat it before it begins to set." Merida began stuffing it in her mouth so quickly she started to choke. Merida turned from the window and stared expectantly at Merida. And stared and stared. Merida knew something was not right as she watched the witch's hopeful expression turn to disappointment. "No," Merida whispered. "Did you forget to put something in the spell?" Freya shook her head as she headed for the door. She returned a moment later with the book. "I followed the instructions to the letter. I even made a trip to Sutherland for a specific herb that is only grown there." She looked up at Merida, despair clouding her eyes. "I am sorry, lass. I don't know what else to do." Disbelief battled with dismay in Merida's head as the reality of what was happening began to settle in. She was still here, despite her parents falling in love before the summer solstice. Despite that she had fulfilled all the requirements asked of her, she remained in the past and her body changing into a beast. The urge to fall to her knees and cry out in pain was almost too strong to fight. So she didn't fight it. She fell to the floor and released an earth-shaking roar. Freya jumped back, her eyes widening in fear. What did this mean for her? For her brothers? For the clan Dunbrock she knew and loved? Would her life, as she knew it, never be the same? Merida forced herself to find some sense of calm, to gain some control over the beast fighting to overwhelm her. What am I to do now? Merida asked. Feeling utterly defeated, she realized there was only one thing she wanted to do. She needed to return to McCameron Castle. She had to see her parents one last time before she turned into a bear forever. I will continue looking for a spell for you, lass, Freya said as she followed Merida to the front of the store. I am becoming a better witch every day. I will fix this, I promise. At the door, Merida apologized for frightening Freya and thanked her for her help, but it was difficult to feel much hope. How long would it take for the witch to gain enough skill to create the right spell? Freya had said herself that the solstice contained the highest measure of magic. Did this mean Merida had to wait until the winter solstice before they could try again? She would not last until then. She would be a bear long before the next solstice. She bade Freya farewell, then climbed atop Angus and began the ride back to her mother's home. By the time she arrived, the revelers had all settled in for the night. The tents that had been set up around the bailey for each clan were all closed in. Merida started to look for Clan Dunbrock's tent, but despite her declaration at the games earlier that day, she did not feel as if she fit in with those Dunbrocks. They were her clan, but only by virtue of their name. She wanted to go home, to be with her family. She got Angus settled at the stable, then reached and searched for the family she did have here, Fergus and Eleanor. Merida found them in the parlor that was just off the side of the great hall. They were accompanied by several of the princess's maids, but the maids gave the couple, who were obviously enamored of each other, a wide berth. Merida pulled up her hood. "There you are," Eleanor exclaimed when she spotted Merida near the door. "Where did you go?" I needed to get away for a bit," Merida answered softly, wondering how on earth she could say goodbye to her mother now. Eleanor eyed her knowingly. "You were running off to the lowlands, weren't you?" "Yes," Merida lied, "but I came back, because I told you I would not leave without you." Merida felt a tingling in her face and what felt like something pulling at her cheeks, almost as if she were growing a snout. She couldn't stay here, not unless she wanted the castle's army to attack her when she transformed into a bear right in front of the princess. But she could not bring herself to leave. Not yet. "Are you ready to leave?" Merida asked the princess. Merida pulled her bottom lip between her teeth. "I am not so sure that I will be going to the lowlands anymore." She looked over her shoulder at Fergus. "Actually, I am quite sure that I will be staying right here in McCameron Kingdom." "What brought about this change?" Merida asked. "I am not remaining because of Fergus," Eleanor said with exaggerated haughtiness. "Well, I am not staying solely because of him. This is my home," she continued, her voice earnest. "You taught me that there is merit in living up in one's duty, not because it is being forced upon me, but because it is a privilege to be born into this position. I see the value in that now. I know that, and I will have to marry soon enough, but I talked to Mother and Father, and they have agreed that we can wait a bit longer. Not all traditions were meant to be followed." "I hope you remember that for many years to come," Merida told her. She gathered Eleanor in a hug, holding her tightly, letting the tears flow freely. "Thank you for everything you have done." What did I do, save for getting you in trouble with the king?" "You have done so much more than that," Merida said, her voice cracking. "I was once so selfish. I only considered what I wanted, never thinking about how my actions affected others. But that was now changed, and it is because of you. You have taught me just as much about my duties and responsibilities, and how important my family is to me," Merida said. "You have changed me for the better, Princess." Tears glistened in Eleanor's eyes. Merida could feel them welling up in her own. "I will miss you," Eleanor said. "I will miss you too," Merida said. She looked up to her father, and the tingling along her skin intensified. "You too, Fergus. Thank you both for everything." Merida returned her attention to the princess and marveled at the journey they had taken together in this short time. She thought back to the morning Eleanor discovered her in the forest, to their jaunts through the forest on their horses. Eleanor McCameron was more than just the woman who would have eventually become her mother. She had become a true friend. Merida choked back a sob. I love you, Eleanor. Her body jolted as something otherworldly rushed through her. It was happening. She was transforming. She took a step back. I shall fetch... She stuck out her hand, using the wall to steady herself. I shall fetch some mead to toast your upcoming nuptials, Merida finished. With one last look, she turned and exited the great hall, heading for the kitchen. She rounded the corner and passed out. Merida opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling, unable to believe that she had lost consciousness yet again. She had to stop doing that. She pushed herself up from the castle's cold, hard floor and continued down the corridor toward the kitchen, where she could slip outside through the scullery where she transformed into a beast. She turned the corner and nearly collided with a short, buxom figure. "Oh, I am so sorry I did not see you," Merida said. "No worries, princess," came a familiar voice. Merida went completely still. "Maudie?" she asked, certain her eyes were playing tricks on her. "Why are you looking at me that way, princess? It is as if you have seen a ghost." I... she stammered. She felt like her brain had forgotten how to function. Maudie's forehead furrowed. "Are you feeling well, princess?" Merida immediately looked down at her hands. No hair, no claws. "Yes," Merida said in a breathless whisper. "Yes," she said again, shouting this time. She was home. "Oh, Maudie, I am so happy to see you." She wrapped her arms around the stunned maid. "Where is everyone?" "We just served the midday meal," Maudie said cautiously. "Now everyone is returning to the grounds for the evening competitions." "Competitions? Does this mean the Highland Games are taking place?" "Of course they are, princess. Are you sure you're well? Maybe you should retire to your room." "I am fine," Merida said, joy sweeping over her. "I must see my family." She took off for the great hall and spotted her brothers just outside the entrance. They were tying rope around the legs of an unsuspecting guard. "Boys!" Merida squealed in delight. Hamish, Hubert, and Harris took one look at her and scurried away. "No, boys, come here, I want to see you." Merida could only shake her head as they scurried off, undoubtedly to cause more mischief. As she elbowed her way through the moving crowd in search for her parents, she heard her father's boisterous voice ahead. "Father!" Merida shouted. She caught sight of his red hair and went running. "Ah, Merida, there you are. Not now," he said when he went to hug him. "The MacGuffin's boy is going to try to toss a caber. I'll bet it lands on his head." "But, father!" Merida stared at him as he walked right past her. Had he not missed her while she had been gone? "Where is Mother?" Merida called to him. "In the sitting room," she said over his shoulder. "Tell her to come down and see the MacGuffin." Confused, Merida went upstairs and found her mother folding the tapestry. "Mother," Merida said. She ran to her, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist and resting her head against her chest. "I've missed you so much." "We were only apart for a few minutes, Merida." Merida lifted her head to look up at her. "Has it only been that long?" "Do you not remember?" the Queen asked. "You made such a stink because we would not allow you to take part in the archery contest. Well, I talked to your grandmother, and she made me realize I was being rather hard on you." "My grandmother? Queen Katerina?" "Yes, Merida, why are you looking at me so?" My grandmother is here?" "Of course she is. You know Queen Katerina and King Douglas would not miss the games. They came down from McCameron Kingdom a fortnight ago." "So there is still a McCameron Kingdom?" Merida asked. Her mother plopped a hand on her hip. "Merida, why are you asking questions to which you already know the answer? How many times has Fergus told you the story of how, after he saved the king's life by taking an arrow meant for him, your grandfather convinced the clans under his rule to join Dunbroch Kingdom after your father and I were wed?" "What about McCameron Kingdom?" Merida asked. "It is tiny, but it remains under your grandparents' rule," Eleanor said. She took a steadying breath. "Once they are no longer with us, it shall come under Dunbroch rule, like all others. But it is nothing to concern ourselves with right now. We should enjoy the games. And you will be happy to know that your father has just issued an order that anyone, be they lad or lass, can now participate in the games." She pointed to Merida's chair. "Grab your bow and get out there." Her bow. The one her mother had thrown in the fire. It was there on the seat, unblemished. I can shoot? Merida asked. I believe you have spoken about nothing else for the past month, her mother said. Go, and make the Dunbrock name proud. Merida reached for the bow and then pulled away and wrapped her mother in another hug. Thank you, Mother. For what? For being you. You are the best queen this kingdom can ask for. I can only hope I'm half as effective as you are during my reign. Her mother leaned back so that she could look at her. During your reign? So you no longer object to being queen? We will discuss that soon, but I have something I must do first, Merida said. Do not worry, I will be back shortly. There is someone I must see. She ran to her wardrobe and grabbed her black cloak.